Hello, here we are for another math lesson. This lesson is on page 296 in your green math notebook. It is multiply and divide decimals. Divide decimals by making the divisor a whole number. So we are getting ready to start. So math book, green notebook, and then your whiteboard and or scratch paper and a pencil, and we're ready to go. Okay, so review. We need to know how to write a fraction. So if we look at this, number one, 12 divided by 13, and we need to turn it into the fraction. Think for a second, what is your numerator? What is your denominator? 12 divided by 13. Hopefully you're thinking that. You write it like you say it. 12 divided by 13. 12, this line right here is divided by 13. Okay, do number two. Hopefully it looks like this. 1 divided by 2. 1 divided by 2. Okay, third one, go. And hopefully it looks like this. So 1 and 2/10 divided by 3. 1 and 2/10 divided by 3. Okay, so that's a little review skill that we're going to need to learn to review and learn and make sure we use it this lesson. So our objective, we're going to divide decimals by making the divisor a whole number. So the divisor, that's the number that is going into what we're dividing. So let's look at this. This is on page 296. Take this division problem and rewrite it as a fraction so that the divisor, the denominator, becomes a whole number. So if we wanted to write this, 30 divided by 1/10, 30 divided by 1/10. So now we need to ask ourselves, what can be done to make our divisor a whole number without changing the value? So think about what you know, your knowledge about equivalent fractions. What do you have to do to get rid of this decimal to make it a whole number, but we still need to keep the value of the fraction the same? Hopefully you were thinking multiply the numerator by 10 and multiply the denominator by 10. So whatever you do to the top, you have to do to the bottom. We have to do the same thing to the numerator as we do to the denominator so we can keep the value the same. So if we do 30 times 10, we get 300. And if we do 1/10 times 10, we move the decimal one place to the right and we get 1. So we can easily find the quotient. 300 divided by 1 is 300. So our quotient would be 300. We got rid of this decimal in our divisor, in our denominator. Okay, so I'm going to let you look at this problem, do what we just did on our practice page on your whiteboard. Go ahead and pause the video for a second and solve this. Okay, welcome back. Unpause. Hopefully your whiteboard looks like this. You did 28 divided by 7/10. 28 divided by 7/10. We need to multiply by 10 to get rid of this decimal, to move it over to make our denominator, our divisor, a whole number. So then when you get 280 divided by 7, if you look right here, 28 divided by 7 is 4, and you have your extra 0, 40. Okay, what could I do for a problem like this? Look right here, our divisor, we need to still make sure we have a whole number. What are we going to do? Hopefully you are thinking multiply by 100 because we've got to move this decimal 2 times to make it a whole number. So if we do that on the denominator, multiply by 100, on the numerator, we also need to multiply by 100. So then we end up with 3,600 divided by 12. If you look right here, 36 divided by 12 is 3, and we have our 2 zeros, so we end up with 300. Okay, so now try this one on your whiteboard. Same thing, set it up as a fraction and then make sure you get rid of the decimal so your divisor, your denominator becomes a whole number. Okay, pause the video and try that now. Okay, welcome back. Let's see your whiteboards. Hopefully they look like this. We had to multiply by 100 to get rid of this decimal to make this a whole number. So we multiplied our numerator by 100. 24 divided by 8 is 3. We have 2 zeros, 300. Okay, now we have this. Let's set it up as a fraction first. 7 and 7/10 divided by 1100. So when we set it up here, we have 7 and 7/10 divided by 1100. So now we need to make this divisor a whole number. So look at our divisor. How many times do we need to multiply to move this over so we have a whole number? 100. So here, 100, there's 2 zeros, so we're going to move this 2 places. And here, there's 2 zeros, so we're going to move this decimal 2 places as well. And we get 770 divided by 11. So we're going to set this up like a division bracket so we can actually solve this. So when we set this up, now our divisor is a whole number, but by making our dividend also a whole number by the same thing, we kept the value. So our quotient is going to be correct because it's going to have the same, this fraction has the same value as this fraction. They are equivalent fractions. So 11 cannot go into 7. So we're going to have a 0 there. We're going to placeholder 0. But 11 can go into 77. We can make 7 groups from that. Then we multiply. 7 times 11 is 77. Then we subtract 0. Then we bring down our 0. So then we start back again. Divide. Can 11 go into 0? Nope, 0 times. Multiply. 11 times 0 is 0. Subtract. We get 0. There is nothing to bring down. So our quotient is going to be 70. And then we're going to check. So 70 times 1100. Notice the values that we're checking. We're checking with our quotient and this, and hopefully we end up here with 7 and 7/10. So we're going to move our decimal over twice. Then we're going to multiply. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 7 is 7. Then we need a placeholder 0. Now we're going to look at this. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 7 is 7. Let's add them up. We get 770. Now we need to put these decimals back. So we moved it over 2 places. So now we need to move it back the other way 2 places. And we end up with 7 and 7/10, which is what we started with. All right. So go ahead and do this one. First, turn this into a fraction. Then make sure your divisor becomes a whole number, and then show me your division. So go ahead and pause the video. Okay, and now you're back. So when we look at this, we set this up as a division problem. 4 and 8/10 divided by 12/10. We had to multiply by 100 to get our divisor to be a whole number, and we get 480 divided by 12. When you divide that, you end up with 40. So right here, 480 divided by 12, here's your division work. You end up with 40, and then we're going to check. 40 times 1200 should come back to 4 and 8/10. Check. Okay, next one. We have 7/10 divided by 4/10. 7/10 divided by 4/10. We need to multiply to make this whole number. 10 times 10 times 10, because we only need to move our decimal over 1 place. And we get 7 divided by 4. So now we're going to set this up into a division bracket. 7 divided by 4. Well, we know 4 can go into 7 just one time. We can only make one group of 4 out of that 7. So 1, then we multiply. Dirty monkey smell bad. Don't forget that. Divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. So we divided for 1. Then 1 times 4, we multiply is 4. 7 minus 4, we subtract is 3. And we are moving past remainders. So in the past, we've done 1, remainder 3. But now we know how to divide with decimals. So we're going to add our decimal here. So 7, this 7, we can write it still keeping it 7 if we add a decimal. This 7 has the same value as that 7. Now we have something that we can bring down. We put our decimal up into our quotient and we're going to bring down the 0. Now we're going to start over again. Divide. 4 goes into 30 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. 30 minus 28 is 2. Now we can't have a decimal and a remainder, so we can add another 0. So now we have another 0 to bring down. And this time when we divide, 4 goes into 20 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. And then we subtract, we get 0. Then we're going to check. So we got a quotient of 1 and 75 hundredths. So 1 and 75 hundredths, when we multiply it by 4 tenths, we're going to end up hopefully with 7 tenths. So let's look at our check. We're going to do 4 times 5 is 20. Then 4 times 7 plus 2 is 30. Then 4 times 1 plus 3 is 7. So we have 1, 2, 3 numbers after the decimal. So we need to put the decimal 3 spaces back. We move them 3 out to the right and then 3 back to the left. And this 7 tenths is what we started with. All right, so go ahead and try this. Remember, set it up as a fraction. Get rid of the decimals so your divisor is a whole number, and then do your division bracket. Make sure you don't leave a remainder. Keep your dividend with the same value. If you need to add a decimal and zeros, go ahead and do that. So go ahead and pause the video. All right, here we go. Let's check your work. So here we needed to get rid of the decimal in the divisor, which is only one place, so times 10. So here we only multiplied our numerator by times 10. That way we keep the value the same. So we get 16 and 55 hundredths divided by 5. Here's our division brackets. So we're going to divide. 5 cannot go into 1, but it can go into 16 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. You subtract, you get 1. We bring down a 5. It goes in 3 times again. 3 times 5 is 15. We get 0. We bring down a 5. 5 goes into 5 one time. You multiply, you get 5. We end up with 0, and there's nothing left to bring down. So we get 3 and 31 hundredths. Then when you did your checking work, you ended up with 1,655. But when you moved your decimal 3 times to the right, you're moving it back 3 times to the left, and this is what we started with. So that is the end of this lesson. So you guys can go ahead and get started on your problem set and your homework. Alrighty.